Hey Pia, I thought it would be easier for me to do this if I just made a little video, so that's what you've got. So this is my calculus book that I used by Paul Forster. He's known for writing a little bit non-traditional type texts. He's got a lot of other supplementals that are really cool that go with this text, including explorations. Here's a table of contents. These are experiments and projects. They're in a supplemental book. Actually, these are projects that are stuck in the lesson. There's also a supplemental book. He's big on communicating to students. What you're looking at is a copy of the student book because this is a calculus text. There isn't a teacher edition, just a solutions manual. Every chapter starts with an image and a really short message here. And then this is something that I really like. Every chapter has a mathematical overview, and it's presented using that rule of 4. And every chapter has an icon that was designed to kind of visually capture the content of that particular chapter of the textbook. The other thing that this text does that's kind of neat is every chapter has a very short opening lesson that kind of previews the chapter or is kind of an exploration to introduce the very opening exercise. So that's my calculus book. Next up is my pre-calculus book. It's a very old edition. Pretty standard table of contents. Lots of teacher stuff. I don't think I've ever read any of that. So each page has an opening page that lists the sections. There's a very short overview. We are looking at the teacher edition. Each section starts with what you'll learn about and why. There's information for the teacher right on the page. And then this particular thing has examples noted here, and some of these sections have an exploration. Let's see if I can find one. Like this, where you have an option to do some sort of a discovery learning in your classroom. So on this one, the margins are generally empty on the student pages, but teacher notes are given in blue on the student pages, and student solutions are in blue. The end of each chapter includes a revisiting of what was done at the beginning. So it closes with a project. That's at the end of every chapter. I don't use those, by the way. Okay, next up is my old CPM Algebra 1 book. This is a student version. The teacher version of this was a binder. Note to students. Table of contents, pretty straightforward. This one, the sections in this are really kind of what I would say are like our topics. So the section 7.1 would be like a topic, and then these would be roughly a daily lesson. I don't know what the current CPM is like. Each chapter starts with a brief opener. There is guiding questions at the beginning of each chapter, and it outlines the chapter on this first page. So here's kind of like the opener for the first chapter. And if we go to the next chapter, you can see it's a very similar setup. Okay, so this is an old version of CPM. Next is another book that I really like. It was called Discovering Algebra. It's a problem-based curriculum. Table of contents. This is a student version. A note to students. This one has the old algebra, California algebra standards in it. Pretty cover with objectives. Yeah, this is an old book, so it's aligned to the California standards. And then it looks like this is kind of the cover page. This has a lesson 0.1, so this might be some sort of a pre-lesson. Yeah, this is chapter 0, so this is an introductory chapter, so it just pops right into the lessons. Okay. There's some information here telling students how to use the book. I have a teacher edition for this one, so you can see how that looks different. Some of the information is in the beginning of that. Table of contents. Standards still the same, specifically keying to the standards. This is all advertising material. Think about all the different features. A page about how you teach with this different approach. Several pages actually. It goes into using technology and cooperative learning, so quite a bit of information about teaching philosophy in this one. It was a reform-based curriculum. They have a sample of a lesson plan, so kind of like maybe what we have when we do planning lessons and modules. They include a pacing calendar for teachers with different options. So let me slow down there. There's one for an enriched course, there's one for a standard course, and there's one for a block schedule. So there's a chapter overview, and this is intended for teachers. And then you have a typical, here's what's on the student page, and here's the teacher information that goes around the side of it. So this is laid out like a typical textbook. Let's see that there. Okay, on to some more current stuff. So the next is a couple of books that, this was our second choice in our school district. So this is Algebra 2, Volume 2. This is a soft cover, and it's the Algebra 2 course is split into 2 volumes. This is the student pages. So you can see the table of contents. It looks like it's broken down into units and modules within the unit. And the modules are paced out, it looks to be in daily lessons. This is a book that was intended to be consumable. So they're structuring their lessons, explore. They have an explain on this one. They have a little reflect piece here. You have some little problems called your turn. They call homework and practice evaluate. And they have a section here called elaborate. So it looks like they like E's in this book. Not really much information at the beginning of a chapter or the beginning of a section, although it does do that same little thing, a little application blurb, and maybe some stuff about reading. And then it looks like each module maybe has a leader page with an essential question and a link to some sort of a video probably, or some enrichment or real-world application. This is interesting. It has a module performance task preview. So there must be some sort of a task. It looks to me like maybe these modules would correspond to our topics. Okay? A little shorter though, it looks like. Here's another student edition from a different Algebra 2 book. This is the book that we actually do use in my district. I don't teach out of it. They don't teach Algebra 2. So you can see a very traditional table of contents. These would probably be a one-day lesson, intended to be a one-day lesson. And if we go to a particular chapter, so you can see what's at the beginning of that chapter, There's a how to use your math book that explains what all the features are at the very beginning. This page looks like it points to some real-world applications. This page is like a pre-assessment page. Some sort of a mathematical practices page. This one is kind of lame. Talk about using the graphing calculator. And then the actual questions. So it starts with an essential question and an exploration. That looks like it's even before the actual lesson starts. Yep, here we go. On the lesson page. So this is the book we use. It's so busy. It's my personal beef against it. I don't think anybody could ever possibly teach all of that. So you can see that every section begins with some sort of an exploration, it looks like, that addresses the essential question. And then it actually goes into the lesson. So I suspect that the authors of this book or the publishers of this book were trying to kind of hit all the check boxes. Give teachers a lot of options when using this curriculum. Let's see. I have a teacher edition for the corresponding geometry book, so we can take a quick peek at that. If you want to see what sort of teacher information is provided at the beginning of each unit, there's a program overview. So, you know, talks about all the other support systems that go with the book, all the different resources that are available, correlating to state standards or Common Core standards. This is a recent book. Even more specific correlation. This is actually going across all 3 levels. Pacing guide. And then it looks like it has a note for the teacher. Okay. Sorry about that. Talks about how this chapter plays out in terms of other things. Common Core progression, this is kind of a nice feature. Okay. Talks about some scaffolds, other resources. There was a chapter pacing guide. More notes. Okay, from the author, I suppose. What you can do if students need help, if they got it. And then this is interesting. Again, some section notes overview, and then the page from the teachers that would kind of correspond, from the student book that would correspond to that is on a different page. So it looks like at the beginning of the chapter they've added pages for the teacher version.
Attention seniors, we want to remind you if you ordered a senior sweatshirt or long sleeve t-shirt.
So here are some specific notes on teaching the exploration that begins a chapter of the book. Okay, and this is again notes to the teacher. And then here would be the corresponding page in the student materials. After that, it looks like any notes from the these Lori's notes, these teacher things, are down at the bottom of the student wrap page. So that was a little bit of a different feature there. So I think that probably gave you enough to think about. I'll try to pull up some of my Springboard books. I don't have those here. They're at my house. And if there's anything interesting there, I'll send it along your way. Thanks. Bye-bye.